The billionaire was forced to leave her, but love refused to die. 10 years later, she gave birth to miracle twins that no one believed could exist. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Sophia Miller's fingers trembled as she fastened the small pearl earrings, her mother's, the only piece of jewelry she owned worth wearing tonight. The modest one-bedroom apartment in Cicero felt especially quiet as she rehearsed the words she'd been practicing all day. "Jackson, I'm pregnant." She whispered it to her reflection in the bathroom mirror, watching her own hazel eyes widen with apprehension. At 25, this wasn't how she had planned her life. 6 months into a whirlwind romance with Jackson Hayes, billionaire heir to the Hayes Enterprises empire, she still sometimes felt like Cinderella waiting for midnight to strike. "He loves me," she reassured herself, smoothing down the navy blue dress she'd splurged on at Nordstrom Rack. "This isn't just about the baby. We'll figure it out together." Outside her window, Chicago's January wind howled against the glass. 7 floors below, a taxi waited, meter running, an extravagance she wouldn't normally allow herself on an educator's salary, but tonight called for exceptions. 40 minutes later, Sophia stepped into the gleaming lobby of the Four Seasons. Crystal chandeliers reflected off marble floors that seemed to whisper, "You don't belong," with each click of her sensible heels. Manicured staff members glided past, their eyes registering her simple coat and department store dress with professional blankness that felt like judgment. The maitre d' escorted her to Jackson's table near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, where ice floes drifted like miniature continents beneath the moonlight. Even after 6 months, the sight of Jackson still caught her breath. His chiseled features softened into a smile when he saw her, his tailored Armani suit casually elegant in a way her carefully selected outfit could never achieve. "You look beautiful," he said, rising to kiss her cheek. But something felt off. His eyes didn't quite meet hers, and his smile seemed practiced, perfunctory. "Thank you for meeting me," Sophia said, settling into her chair, trying to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. "I know you've been busy with the Seattle merger." Jackson nodded, already signaling the sommelier. "The usual Bordeaux for me," he said, then glanced at Sophia. "Sparkling water for the lady." Sophia's hand instinctively moved toward her still flat stomach. "Actually, I'll just have water tonight. Plain water." Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Impatience, perhaps. Or worse, suspicion. Throughout the appetizer course, Jackson spoke of business dealings and board meetings, his voice carrying the confidence of a man born knowing his place in the world. Sophia picked at her salad, the carefully arranged endives suddenly tasteless as she searched for an opening in his monologue. "The Hayes Foundation Gala raised $17 million, he was saying. "My father was particularly impressed with—" "Jackson," Sophia interrupted, setting down her fork with a soft clink against fine china. "I need to tell you something important." He paused, wine glass halfway to his lips, irritation flashing across his features before settling into neutral attentiveness. "Of course, what is it?" Sophia took a deep breath, suddenly aware of the ambient restaurant noise fading away, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them like smoke. Jackson's face, normally so expressive, became utterly still. He carefully placed his wine glass on the table, the movement deliberate and controlled. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice dropping to a glacial whisper. "That's convenient." Sophia blinked, the words slicing through her like a blade. "Convenient? Do you honestly think," Jackson continued, each word precisely measured, "that someone in my position would marry a teacher from the South Side?" The restaurant suddenly seemed to shrink around her, the white tablecloth transforming into a spotlight. At nearby tables, diners pretended not to listen while straining to catch every word. "Jackson, I'm not asking you to marry me," Sophia said, her voice barely audible. "I just wanted you to know—" "Sophia," he cut her off, leaning forward slightly. "You've been a pleasant distraction, I won't deny that. But let's not delude ourselves. You don't have the sophistication, the lineage, or frankly the intelligence for the world I inhabit. A pregnancy doesn't change that fundamental reality." Each word hammered into her chest like nails. 6 months of whispered promises and passionate nights collapsed into this single brutal moment of truth. "I don't understand," she whispered, her hands trembling beneath the table. "Last weekend at the lake house you said—" "I said what men say," Jackson replied, his voice now tinged with boredom. "Surely you're not naive enough to have believed it meant something permanent." He reached into his Italian leather wallet and withdrew a check, placing it on the table between them with manicured fingers. "This should resolve the issue. Do what needs to be done." Sophia stared at the check, the amount making her eyes widen despite herself. "My lawyers will contact you," Jackson continued, adjusting his Armani jacket as he stood. "Sign the confidentiality agreement when it arrives. Any attempt to associate my name with this situation, and you'll face legal consequences beyond your imagination." He looked down at her one last time, his blue-gray eyes, the eyes she'd fallen in love with, now cold as the January lake outside. "Goodbye, Sophia." As Jackson strode confidently through the restaurant, nodding at acquaintances, Sophia remained frozen in her seat. Through the window she watched snowflakes beginning to fall on Michigan Avenue, their delicate patterns dissolving against the glass, just as her dreams were dissolving before her eyes. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Time lost meaning as Sophia sat alone at the table for two, surrounded by pitying glances and whispered speculation. "Ma'am?" A discreet security officer appeared at her elbow. "I've been asked to escort you out." "Of course," Sophia whispered, gathering her purse, leaving the check untouched on the table. The humiliation burned hotter than any tears as she was guided through the restaurant like an intruder, past couples enjoying romantic dinners and businessmen sealing million-dollar deals with handshakes. Back in her apartment, Sophia collapsed onto her worn sofa, still wearing her coat. The silence pressed against her eardrums until she could hear her own heartbeat, a persistent reminder that lives, continued despite her world shattering. The following weeks unfolded like a carefully orchestrated nightmare. The Hayes public relations machine moved with terrifying efficiency. Blind items appeared in gossip columns about the South Side girl trying to trap the heir. Sophia's phone filled with voicemails from reporters seeking comment on her relationship with one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors. "Ms. Miller, could I speak with you privately?" The headmistress of the private school where Sophia taught environmental education caught her between classes one Tuesday. "We've received a concerned call from an important donor." By afternoon, Sophia's desk was cleared, her career in private education effectively over. She didn't need to ask which donor had made the call. Back in her Cicero apartment, bills accumulated with alarming speed. Rent, utilities, and now mounting medical expenses formed precarious stacks on her kitchen counter. Sophia stared at them, one hand resting on her stomach, which had just begun to show the slightest curve. The check Jackson had written still lay in her purse, untouched. On the night she learned she was carrying twins, Sophia finally removed it, her fingers tracing the obscene amount, enough to solve all her problems and then some. With methodical precision, she tore it into tiny pieces, letting them flutter into the trash like confetti from a celebration that would never happen. By the end of February, Sophia had secured 3 simultaneous jobs: morning receptionist at a clinic in Bridgeport, afternoon waitress at a diner in Ukrainian Village, and overnight data entry for a medical transcription service she could do from home. Her pregnancy, classified high risk with twins, meant she often operated on 4 hours of sleep or less. "You should be on bed rest," her obstetrician warned during a checkup. "Your blood pressure is concerning." "I don't have that luxury," Sophia replied simply. One particularly exhausting shift at the diner, Sophia was refilling coffee when a well-dressed patron recognized her from the gossip pages. "Aren't you the one who tried to trap Jackson Hayes?" the woman asked loudly, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she stirred her tea. "Honey, men like him don't marry women like you." Sophia stood perfectly still, coffee pot suspended mid-pour, as other customers turned to stare. "Your refill is on the house," she finally said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning her cheeks. "Enjoy your meal." At 32 weeks, Sophia's water broke during her receptionist shift. Alone in the ambulance, clutching the sidebar as contractions tore through her body, she had never felt more terrified or more determined. Hours later in Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Sophia peered through the incubator glass at Oliver and Emma, their tiny bodies covered with wires and tubes, fighting for every breath. Born 7 weeks early, each weighing less than 4 pounds, they were perfect despite their precarious start. Unable to afford a private room, Sophia recovered in a shared space with 3 other new mothers. Throughout the day, their rooms filled with flowers, balloons, extended families cooing over healthy newborns. Sophia's corner remained bare except for a single card from Diana Chen, the kind pediatrician who had taken a special interest in the twins' case. On the 3rd night, while her roommates slept, Sophia wheeled herself to the NICU. Placing one hand on each incubator, she made a whispered promise to her children. "I swear to you both," she said, her voice steady despite her tears, "that we will build a life so extraordinary that one day he'll be on his knees begging to know you, and by then, you'll be too great to need him." The night nurse pretended not to notice as Sophia continued her vigil until dawn, memorizing every perfect finger and struggling breath of the children who now gave her life new purpose and direction. While turning off the lights in her apartment after another 18-hour shift, Sophia couldn't possibly imagine that in 10 years, she would be turning on the lights of a billion-dollar company built with her own hands, illuminating not just her future, but that of millions around the world. The beeping of monitors provided a sterile lullaby in the NICU where Sophia spent every possible moment between shifts. 68 days had passed since Oliver and Emma's premature arrival, their tiny bodies still dwarfed by the incubators that had become their first homes. Sophia's fingers traced the transparent barrier separating her from her children, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as Emma's hand reflexively closed around her pinky through the circular opening. "You're quite remarkable, you know that?" Sophia turned to find Dr. Diana Chen approaching, clipboard in hand, dark circles under her eyes matching Sophia's own. The pediatrician had become a constant presence, often checking on the twins outside her regular rounds. "I'm just doing what any mother would," Sophia replied, gently extracting her finger from Emma's grip. "Most mothers have support systems," Diana countered, checking Oliver's vitals. "Most aren't working 3 jobs while visiting the NICU at 2 in the morning." Sophia's shoulders slumped slightly. "I don't have the luxury of choice." Diana studied her for a moment. "The twins are making excellent progress. If this continues, we might discuss discharge within a couple of weeks." The words should have brought joy, but Sophia felt a wave of panic instead. "My apartment is barely big enough for one person, let alone premature twins who need special care, and the heating is unreliable and—" "Breathe," Diana instructed, placing a gentle hand on Sophia's arm. "One problem at a time. First, let's get these little fighters strong enough to leave." As Diana checked Emma's lungs, Sophia unfolded a crumpled scientific journal from her worn backpack, her small indulgence during lunch breaks. The article outlined emerging technologies in water purification, a subject that had fascinated her since her unfinished environmental science degree. "Water filtration systems?" Diana asked, glancing at the journal. "It was my focus before I had to drop out of college," Sophia explained, suddenly self-conscious. "Third year at UIC, scholarship ran out. I've always believed clean water access could be revolutionized with the right approach." Diana tilted her head. "My brother's a chemical engineer at MIT. He's always talking about water purification challenges. The current systems are either too expensive for widespread implementation or too inefficient, Sophia said, her fatigue momentarily vanishing as she flipped to a page covered with her own annotations. I've been thinking about a filtration method using modified carbon nanotubes that could potentially reduce costs by 70% while increasing efficiency. Diana blinked, clearly surprised by the technical analysis. That sounds remarkably innovative. Just a pipe dream, Sophia said, closing the journal as Oliver began to fuss. Right now, my only focus is getting these two home and keeping us all afloat. Perhaps not just a dream, Diana murmured, watching as Sophia instinctively calmed Oliver with a gentle touch. My brother Marcus is visiting next week. He's been investing in sustainable startups. Would you be interested in meeting him? Sophia looked up, uncertainty crossing her features. I'm a single mom working 3 minimum-wage jobs with preemies in the NICU. I don't exactly scream investment opportunity. You underestimate yourself, Diana replied simply. Just like someone else did. 2 weeks later, Sophia sat in the hospital cafeteria, nervously straightening the twins' blankets in their modified stroller. After 73 days in the NICU, Oliver and Emma had finally been discharged, though both still required oxygen supplements and round-the-clock monitoring. Sophia had managed to secure a slightly larger apartment in the same building, still in Cicero, still with unreliable heating, but with an actual bedroom where the twins could sleep. Her savings were depleted, her credit cards maxed out, and she'd returned to work just 4 days after bringing the twins home, leaving them with a neighbor who charged less than professional childcare. Ms. Miller? Sophia looked up to see a tall Asian man approaching, his casual attire belying the intelligence in his eyes. Marcus Chen extended his hand with a warm smile that reminded her of his sister. Please, call me Sophia, she said, shaking his hand before gesturing to the sleeping infants. And these are Oliver and Emma. Marcus peered at the twins with genuine interest. Diana wasn't exaggerating about their progress. She says they're fighters, like their mother. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. Diana's been incredibly kind. I'm not sure why she thinks this meeting is worthwhile, though. I have ideas, not credentials or resources. Ideas are where everything begins, Marcus said, settling into the chair across from her. Diana mentioned something about carbon nanotube filtration systems. For the next hour, the hospital cafeteria transformed into an impromptu presentation space. Sophia scribbled diagrams on napkins, explaining her concept for a revolutionary water purification system, while Marcus asked increasingly specific questions. The twins slept peacefully, oblivious to their mother's animated explanations of molecular filtration techniques. The key innovation would be the arrangement of the nanotubes, Sophia explained, sketching rapidly on her 4th napkin. By aligning them in this configuration and treating them with this specific polymer coating, you could theoretically filter out contaminants down to 1 nanometer while using minimal energy. Marcus studied the napkin, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine intrigue. This is remarkably similar to research being done at MIT, but you've approached it from a completely different angle. I subscribe to scientific journals with my library card, Sophia admitted. It's how I stay connected to a field I never got to finish studying. Marcus leaned back, studying her. What would you do if you had the resources to develop this? Sophia paused, allowing herself a moment of impossible imagination. I'd create a modular system that could be implemented anywhere from rural villages to urban infrastructure. Clean water shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a universal right. And what do you have right now to make this happen? Sophia gestured to the napkins covered in her handwriting. Just this idea and the determination to make it something that changes the world. Her eyes, red from sleepless nights, still managed to shine with conviction. That's it. Marcus nodded slowly, gathering the napkins with surprising care. Sometimes, that's exactly enough. That night, In her new apartment, Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor between the twins' second-hand bassinets. Snow fell silently outside, coating Chicago in white as she alternated between feeding Oliver and adjusting Emma's oxygen tube. The meeting with Marcus seemed like a dream now, a brief escape into a world of possibility before reality pulled her back. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Interested in developing your concept. Can provide initial funding for lab space and materials. Call when convenient. Marcus Chen. Sophia stared at the message until the screen went dark, her hands trembling slightly as she set down the bottle. Reaching for Oliver, she lifted him against her shoulder, his tiny body warm against her neck. "Did you hear that?" she whispered to her son. "Someone believes in Mom's crazy idea." The next morning brought another text with an address in Lincoln Park and instructions to meet at 2 in the afternoon. Sophia scrambled to arrange coverage for her clinic shift, bundled the twins against the February cold, and navigated public transportation with a determination that ignored the logistical nightmare of traveling across Chicago with premature twins and no car. The address led to a small business incubator housed in a renovated industrial building. Marcus waited inside, along with a woman he introduced as his legal counsel. "Before we discuss anything," Marcus began, "I want to be clear about what I'm proposing. I believe your filtration concept has exceptional potential, but bringing it to market would require significant development." Sophia nodded, her hands automatically adjusting Emma's blanket. "I understand. I'm not delusional about the challenges. I'm prepared to invest $250,000 as seed capital," Marcus continued, watching her face carefully, "in exchange for 30% equity in whatever company emerges from this concept." The room seemed to tilt slightly as Sophia processed his words. $250,000? Enough to secure proper lab space, initial materials, and most importantly, allow you to hire childcare so you can focus on development, Marcus explained. "It's not charity, Sophia. It's an investment in what I believe could be revolutionary technology." Hours later, walking home through the snowy streets with a signed term sheet in her diaper bag, Sophia felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. Not the desperate kind that had sustained her through the darkest nights, but something solid and tangible. That evening, after settling the twins in their bassinets, Sophia found a magazine someone had left on the bus. The glossy cover featured Jackson Hayes and Victoria Montgomery, daughter of Senator Montgomery, at the opening of a new Hayes Enterprises headquarters. "Chicago's Golden Couple," the headline declared, describing their whirlwind romance. 6 months. The same amount of time he had spent with her before discarding her like something broken and worthless. Sophia placed the magazine aside, turning instead to the stack of scientific papers Marcus had given her. As snow continued to fall outside her window, she began to make notes, sketching improved versions of her design while the twins slept peacefully beside her. "A name," she whispered to herself, tapping her pen against the paper. "We need a name for this company." Her eyes fell on the twins, then back to her notes. With sudden clarity, she wrote at the top of the page, "Miltech Solutions." 3 weeks later, Sophia stood in a small, rented laboratory space, watching as Marcus assembled basic equipment. She had reduced her work schedule to part-time at the clinic, eliminated her other jobs, and hired a nursing student as a part-time nanny. For the first time since the twins' birth, she slept more than 4 consecutive hours, awakening with renewed focus and determination. "We should celebrate," Marcus suggested as they unpacked the last of the supplies. "This is day 1 of something important." Sophia smiled, checking her watch. She had 30 minutes before needing to relieve the nanny. "I know exactly how to celebrate." Later that afternoon, Sophia pushed the twins' stroller into a small ice cream shop in Cicero. As Oliver and Emma slept peacefully, unaware of the significance of the moment, she ordered a small vanilla cone. "Someday," she promised them quietly, "we'll have much more to celebrate. And by then, the name Miller will mean something very different than it does today. When a small local newspaper published a tiny announcement about the formation of Milltech Solutions, a promising startup focused on water purification technology, no one could have predicted that in just 8 years, Sophia would be refusing a $1 billion acquisition offer from Hayes Enterprises itself. The small ice cream shop in Cicero became a ritual for Sophia and the twins. Every milestone, no matter how modest, warranted a celebration cone. When Oliver first smiled, vanilla. When Emma's oxygen supplements were finally discontinued, vanilla. When Sophia's preliminary filtration tests showed promising results, 2 scoops of vanilla with sprinkles. The twins were now 6 months old, developing at their adjusted age of 4 months. Their bassinets had been replaced by second-hand cribs that dominated the bedroom of their small apartment. The living room had gradually transformed into a makeshift office, with scientific journals and technical drawings covering every available surface. "Okay, bedtime for you too," Sophia whispered, carefully lowering Emma into her crib. Oliver was already asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in a rhythm that still sometimes caused Sophia to hover anxiously, counting each breath. Once certain both babies were settled, she returned to her desk, a folding table positioned near the cribs so she could work while watching them sleep. Tonight's task: refining the computer model for the filtration system. The rudimentary lab space provided by Marcus's investment had yielded encouraging results, but translating theoretical success into a functional prototype was proving challenging. Sophia's eyelids grew heavy as the clock approached 2 in the morning. The model on her laptop blurred, equations swimming before her exhausted vision. When her head dipped toward the keyboard, she jerked awake, momentarily disoriented. "Just 5 minutes," she murmured, laying her head on folded arms. "Just 5. She woke with a start to Emma's hungry cries. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. She'd slept for 4 hours hunched over the table. As she prepared bottles and changed diapers, Sophia's mind continued processing the filtration problem that had stumped her the night before. "That's it," she whispered suddenly, nearly dropping Oliver's bottle. "The nanomaterial alignment. We've been approaching it from the wrong angle." She fumbled for her phone one-handed, balancing Oliver against her shoulder. "Marcus, I think I've solved the membrane integrity issue. Can you meet at the lab in 2 hours?" The nanny arrived 30 minutes later, a nursing student named Jen who adored the twins and needed the flexible hours. Sophia rushed through handover instructions while simultaneously changing into less rumpled clothing. "Their bottles are prepared in the fridge. Emma might need the reflux medication around noon and—" "Sophia," Jen interrupted gently, "we've got this routine down. Go science the world." The small laboratory space felt alive with possibility as Sophia sketched her new approach for Marcus. Their excitement mounted as initial simulations confirmed her theory. The reconfigured membrane structure increased filtration efficiency by 37% while reducing energy requirements. "We need to build this prototype immediately," Marcus said, already reaching for his phone. "I know someone at Northwestern who might let us use their equipment." 3 weeks and countless sleepless nights later, Sophia held the first functional AquaGen prototype, a cylinder roughly the size of a water bottle, containing the revolutionary filtration system. The moment of truth came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Marcus poured visibly contaminated water from Chicago River samples into the input valve while Sophia monitored the internal pressure. When clear water began flowing from the output, both stared in momentary disbelief before erupting into cheers. "It works," Sophia whispered, then louder. "It actually works!" The celebration was cut short by Sophia's phone alarm. "I need to get home. The twins have their pediatric follow-up." Later that evening, after the twins were asleep, Sophia sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at the prototype on her nightstand. From her wallet, she extracted a worn newspaper clipping, a society page photo of Jackson with his fiancée Victoria Montgomery at the opera opening. His smiling face seemed to mock her tiny apartment, her exhaustion, her struggle. "You said I lacked the intelligence for your world," she whispered to the image. "You have no idea what my world will become." 2 months later, Sophia stood nervously outside the patent office, the twins asleep in their double stroller. At 9 months old, they had begun showing distinct personalities: Oliver observant and methodical, Emma bold and demanding. Despite their premature start, both were finally reaching normal developmental milestones. Inside, the patent examiner, a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose, glanced skeptically between Sophia and the stroller before accepting her application materials. "You're the inventor?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "Yes," Sophia replied, straightening her posture. "The Aquagen system utilizes a proprietary arrangement of modified carbon nanotubes with a novel polymer coating to—" "Yes, yes," he interrupted, flipping through her diagrams. "And you developed this— where exactly?" "Initially in my apartment," Sophia answered honestly. "More recently in our laboratory space in Lincoln Park." The examiner's dubious expression spoke volumes, but he continued processing the application. Oliver chose that moment to wake, his curious eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. When he began fussing, Sophia expertly retrieved a toy from the diaper bag while continuing her technical explanation of the filtration mechanism. The examiner's expression softened slightly. "You developed this while caring for twins?" "They're my inspiration," Sophia replied simply. The patent process would take months, but Marcus insisted they move forward with establishing the company formally. The investment had dwindled significantly with laboratory expenses and prototype development, leaving precious little for expansion. "We need to hire help," Marcus insisted during one of their strategy sessions. "You can't continue doing everything yourself." "We can't afford it," Sophia countered, reviewing their dwindling finances. "And I can't pay a proper salary." The solution came unexpectedly when Sophia posted a carefully worded advertisement at local engineering schools. The response that caught her attention wasn't from the most qualified applicant, but the most determined, a recent engineering graduate named Zoe who had been rejected from multiple firms. "They said they were concerned about cultural fit," Zoe explained during her interview in the tiny office space they had added to the lab, which is code for "We don't hire women engineers." Sophia studied the young woman's impressive transcript. "I can't offer competitive salary. All I can offer is equity in a company that might change the world, or might fail spectacularly." Zoe glanced around the modest space, then at the prototype on the desk. "I'd rather own a piece of something meaningful than be excluded from something profitable." As autumn approached, the twins celebrated their first birthday. Not that they understood the significance of the small cupcake Sophia presented them, which ended up mostly smeared across their high chairs. The milestone hit Sophia harder than expected, triggering memories of the year before, the abandoned restaurant table, the lonely hospital room. That same week, while scrolling through industry news, Sophia's breath caught at a headline: "Hayes Enterprises CEO announces engagement to senator's daughter." The accompanying photo showed Jackson and Victoria at a charity gala, her diamond engagement ring prominently displayed. The article mentioned a whirlwind romance of 6 months. Sophia closed the browser, returning to the proposal she was drafting for a local environmental nonprofit. With the patent pending and a functional prototype demonstrated, Miltech needed clients, even small ones, to establish credibility. The Chicago Environmental Coalition was hardly a prestigious client, but their need was genuine, providing clean water access to underserved neighborhoods with aging infrastructure. Sophia prepared her presentation with the same meticulous care she would have used for a multinational corporation. "Our system can be implemented at 1/3 the cost of conventional filtration," she explained to the coalition's board members in their cramped meeting room. The twins, now walking unsteadily, played quietly in a corner under Jen's supervision. Sophia couldn't afford childcare for every meeting, and the coalition had been understanding about her situation. "This technology could transform water access for our communities," said the coalition's director, studying the prototype with genuine interest. "But our budget is extremely limited. We're prepared to offer favorable terms," Sophia replied. "This would be our first implementation and the data would be invaluable." The contract was modest, barely enough to cover production costs, but it represented something priceless: validation. Someone besides Marcus believed in Aquagen enough to invest in it. That evening, Sophia celebrated with ice cream for the twins and a rare glass of wine for herself. As Oliver and Emma played on the living room floor, now crowded with both business documents and children's toys, she allowed herself a moment of cautious pride. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Hayes Enterprises was featured in the business section for acquiring a tech startup for $80 million. The accompanying photo showed Jackson in an impeccable suit, shaking hands with the company's founder. Rather than dwelling on the image, Sophia turned her attention to Emma, who had managed to stack 3 blocks before knocking them down with a delighted giggle. Oliver watched his sister with intense concentration before attempting to replicate her tower, methodically placing each block. "You two are going to build something so much greater than towers," Sophia promised them. The following morning, Sophia arrived at the small office space that now served as Miltech's headquarters to find Marcus waiting with uncharacteristic excitement. "We've been invited to present at the Clean Water Initiative conference," he announced. "It's small, but there will be representatives from several environmental agencies and municipal water authorities." "When?" Sophia asked, already mentally calculating childcare arrangements. "Next month, and Sophia—" Marcus paused, his expression serious. "This could be our turning point." The preparation consumed every spare moment. Sophia refined the presentation between bedtime stories and midnight feedings, practiced her delivery while pushing the twins on park swings, and worked with Zoe to create a more elegant demonstration model. On the day of the conference, Sophia stood backstage at the modest hotel venue, smoothing down her single professional outfit, a navy pantsuit purchased secondhand but carefully tailored to fit her slender frame. Through the curtain, she could see the audience of perhaps 50 people, primarily engineers and public officials. "Ready?" Marcus asked, adjusting his tie. Sophia nodded, thinking of the twins at home with Jen, of the countless nights working until her eyes burned, of the patent examiner's skepticism, and of Jackson's cruel dismissal. More than ready. When Sophia connected the Aquagen prototype to the sample of visibly contaminated water and clear, drinkable water immediately flowed from the output, the small audience erupted in applause. Questions followed, technical, probing, genuine, and Sophia answered each with confident precision. Afterward, representatives from 3 different municipal water authorities requested meetings, and an environmental consultant pressed his card into her hand with urgency. "This could transform disaster response," he explained. "I work with FEMA. We should talk." As Sophia gathered her materials, she caught sight of a newspaper left on a nearby chair. The business section featured Hayes Enterprises' newest luxury development in downtown Chicago, with Jackson cutting a ribbon alongside his fiancée and the mayor. Sophia tucked her prototype carefully into its case, a smile touching her lips. When a small local newspaper published an article about the promising startup focused on water purification technology, no one could have predicted that in just 8 years, Sophia would be refusing a $2.1 billion acquisition offer from Hayes Enterprises itself. The small local newspaper article about Miltech caught more attention than Sophia anticipated. Within days of its publication, her inbox filled with inquiries from potential clients and curious investors. Though most were small municipal agencies with limited budgets, each represented something Sophia had feared might never come: legitimacy. Sophia taped the newspaper clipping to her refrigerator, a modest monument to the first public acknowledgement of her company. At 27, she felt decades older than the naive 25-year-old who had entered the 4 seasons with hope in her heart and a secret on her lips. The twins, now 14 months old, babbled at her feet as she prepared their breakfast in the pre-dawn darkness. "Mama work," Emma declared confidently, one of her first recognizable phrases. "That's right, sweetheart," Sophia replied, pouring Cheerios onto their shared high-chair tray. "Mama has to work early today, but Jen will be here soon." The truth was, Sophia worked every day, often beginning at 4:30 in the morning before the twins awoke. Online business courses filled these quiet hours: accounting, marketing, corporate structure, subjects she had never imagined needing to master. With Marcus's investment dwindling and the company's future hanging by a thread, she couldn't afford business consultants or executive education. "Self-made means self-taught," she whispered to herself, a mantra repeated during moments of doubt. When Jen arrived to take over childcare, Sophia kissed the twins goodbye and headed to the small office space that now housed Miltech Solutions. The room had expanded from a single desk to include 3 workstations, one for Sophia, one for Zoe, and one for their newest addition, Catherine Williams, a seasoned CFO who had taken a massive pay cut in exchange for equity after seeing the AquaGen prototype in action. "Morning," Catherine greeted, already analyzing spreadsheets despite the early hour. At 52, she had decades of experience at major corporations but had hit the glass ceiling repeatedly. "We need to discuss funding options. The coalition contract barely covers material costs, and we need capital for the municipal demonstrations." Sophia set down her worn laptop bag. "I've prepared loan applications for 3 different banks." Catherine's expression softened with something like pity. "Sophia, I've reviewed the applications. Banks don't fund startups like ours, led by a single mother with no business track record and technology that sounds too revolutionary to be credible." "Then what do you suggest?" Sophia asked, fighting the familiar tightness in her chest that accompanied financial discussions. "Angel investors, venture capital, people who take risks banks won't." That afternoon, Sophia sat across from a loan officer at Chicago First National, her back rigid as the young man reviewed her application with barely concealed skepticism. "Ms. Miller, your company is too risky for a traditional business loan," he explained, closing her file without meeting her eyes. "Perhaps you might consider a personal loan with a co-signer." "I don't have anyone to co-sign," Sophia replied evenly, gathering her documents. "Thank you for your time." Similar responses followed at 2 other banks. By the end of the week, Catherine's prediction was confirmed. Traditional funding wouldn't materialize for Miltech. "We need to be strategic," Marcus advised during their Friday meeting. "The Clean Water Initiative conference generated interest. Let's leverage that while it's fresh." Sophia nodded, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. "I've scheduled demonstrations for the Evanston Water Authority and the disaster response team next week. If we can secure even 1 municipal contract, we'll make it work," Zoe assured her, the young engineer's confidence a balm to Sophia's frayed nerves. That evening, while the twins slept, Sophia updated her presentation materials at the kitchen table. Her phone chimed with an email notification that made her heart race. An invitation to present at a United Nations conference on the global water crisis in 4 months. "Oh my God," she whispered, reading the message 3 times to ensure it wasn't a mistake. The conference would include representatives from countries facing severe water scarcity, international aid organizations, and potential funding partners. It was an unprecedented opportunity, if Miltech survived long enough to attend. The following months became a carefully orchestrated marathon. Sophia stretched their remaining funds by cutting her own already minimal salary and moving development equipment into their apartment to reduce lab rental costs. The twins, now approaching their 2nd birthday, became accustomed to the sight of their mother rehearsing presentations while preparing their meals. "Water clean," Oliver would declare, pointing to Sophia's diagrams with surprising comprehension for a toddler. "That's right, sweetheart," Sophia would answer, heart swelling with pride at his growing vocabulary. "Mama makes water clean for everyone." 3 weeks before the UN conference, disaster struck. The prototype malfunctioned during a demonstration for a potential investor, leaking contaminated water across the conference table. Though Zoe quickly identified the issue as a simple seal failure, the damage was done. The investor declined to proceed. That night, Sophia sat on her bathroom floor after the twins were asleep, tears flowing freely for the first time in months. The UN conference required an international flight, hotel accommodations, and a functioning demonstration model, expenses they couldn't cover with their dwindling resources. Maybe he was right, she whispered, the doubt she normally suppressed rushing forward. Maybe I don't have what it takes to succeed in this world. Her gaze fell on the twins' bath toys scattered across the floor, colorful plastic cups and boats they delighted in during evening baths. Emma's favorite duck sat upside down, its cheerful yellow a stark contrast to Sophia's mood. Wiping her tears, Sophia reached for her phone and called Marcus. "I need a personal loan," she said without preamble. $10,000. I'll give additional equity if necessary. "Sophia, the UN conference is our best shot. I can't miss it, Marcus. I won't." 3 days later, with Marcus's loan secured and the prototype repaired, Sophia faced a new challenge, preparing for her first international trip with the twins. "You want to bring 2-year-old twins to a United Nations conference?" Catherine asked incredulously during their planning meeting. "I don't have a choice," Sophia explained. "Jen has finals that week, and I can't afford full-time childcare for 5 days." In the end, Diana Chen, the pediatrician who had first connected Sophia with Marcus, offered to accompany them to help with the twins. "Consider it my investment in Miltech's future," she said when Sophia protested. The night before the conference, Sophia paced her hotel room in Geneva, rehearsing her presentation while the twins slept in a travel crib. The stakes felt impossibly high. Success could secure Miltech's future, while failure might end their journey before it truly began. "You don't have the sophistication, the lineage, or the intelligence for the world I inhabit," Jackson's voice echoed in her memory. Sophia squared her shoulders, glancing at her sleeping children. "Watch me." The United Nations conference hall buzzed with multiple languages and dark suits. Sophia, dressed in her carefully tailored navy pantsuit, now her trademark professional attire, felt simultaneously out of place and exactly where she belonged. Diana had taken the twins to a nearby park, scheduled to return just before Sophia's presentation slot. In the moments before taking the stage, doubt threatened to overwhelm her. The audience included water management experts from 40 countries, representatives from major international aid organizations, and potential funding partners with resources beyond anything Miltech had previously encountered. "You're on in 2 minutes, Ms. Miller," a conference coordinator informed her. Sophia nodded, clutching her presentation materials. Her hands trembled slightly as she watched the current speaker concluding his remarks on desalination technology. "Breathe," she whispered to herself. "You've earned your place here." When Sophia stepped onto the stage, time seemed to slow. The spotlights felt warm against her skin as she surveyed the expectant faces before her. Her opening slide displayed a single stark statistic: 800 million people worldwide lacked access to clean water. "Water isn't just a resource," she began, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "It's the difference between life and death, between disease and health, between poverty and opportunity." For the next 20 minutes, Sophia commanded the room with unexpected authority. She explained the Aquagen technology in terms accessible to non-scientists while maintaining the technical precision that earned respect from experts. When she connected the prototype to a sample of heavily contaminated water collected from a polluted Swiss stream that morning, the audience leaned forward collectively. Clear, drinkable water flowed from the output within seconds. A murmur rippled through the conference hall, followed by spontaneous applause. During the question period, Sophia answered each inquiry with confident precision, her comprehensive knowledge of both the technology and its potential applications evident to everyone present. "The Aquagen system can be deployed in 3 different configurations," she explained in response to a question from a Nigerian water minister. "From individual household units to community-scale implementations serving up to 5,000 people." As Sophia gathered her materials after the presentation, She found herself surrounded by representatives from countries across Africa and Asia, all eager to discuss potential implementations in regions with critical water needs. "This could save thousands in our rural communities," the Kenyan delegate told her, examining the prototype with reverent hands. By day's end, Sophia had scheduled meetings with representatives from Ghana, Kenya, and Tanzania, along with the United States Agency for International Development. When she finally returned to the hotel room where Diana was reading bedtime stories to the twins, she collapsed onto the bed in exhausted disbelief. "It worked," she whispered. "They actually listened." The following morning, Sophia met with the USAID representative, a pragmatic woman named Eleanor, who asked pointed questions about scaling capacity and implementation logistics. By the meeting's end, Eleanor slid a business card across the table. "We're preparing a $4 million grant for emergency water purification in disaster zones," she said. "Submit a formal proposal by next month. Based on what I've seen, Miltech would be a strong contender." $4 million. The amount was incomprehensible, nearly 20 times their current operating budget. When Sophia and the twins returned to Chicago, Miltech transformed almost overnight. They moved into a proper office space with an expanded laboratory. Catherine began recruiting additional engineers, while Zoe took charge of refining the AquaGen system for different implementation scenarios. Within 6 months, the USAID contract was secured, and pilot projects were scheduled in 3 African nations. Amid this whirlwind of growth, Sophia remained acutely aware that her most important job was mothering Oliver and Emma, now approaching their 3rd birthday. Their intelligence was becoming increasingly apparent. Oliver solving simple mathematics problems meant for children twice his age, Emma demonstrating an intuitive understanding of mechanical systems that astonished Sophia's engineers. "They need proper education," Sophia told Marcus during one of their strategy meetings, "not just daycare." With the company's financial position stabilizing, Sophia hired specialized tutors to work with the twins 3 mornings each week. She rearranged her schedule to maintain their afternoon routine herself, reading advanced books on childhood cognitive development during rare moments of downtime. When Fortune magazine published a small profile of the promising startup from Chicago with potential to revolutionize access to clean water, Sophia framed it alongside the original local newspaper clipping. The contrast between the 2 articles represented everything Miltech had achieved in less than 2 years, and hinted at everything still possible. As she hung the framed articles on the wall of their new, slightly larger apartment, Sophia didn't know that in just 6 years, she would appear on Fortune's cover as one of the most powerful CEOs in the world. Fortune magazine's small profile of Miltech created ripples throughout the clean technology sector. Sophia folded the article carefully, tucking it into her portfolio before stepping through the gleaming glass doors of their new corporate headquarters. The renovated 4-story building in Chicago's Innovation District was a far cry from their humble beginnings just 2 years earlier. As Sophia crossed the lobby with its tasteful blue-green color scheme symbolizing clean water, employees nodded respectfully, some still appearing slightly awed in her presence. "Good morning, Ms. Miller," called the receptionist. "The executive team is assembled in the conference room for the quarterly review." "Thank you, Alicia," Sophia replied, adjusting her sleek blazer, no longer second-hand, but a carefully selected piece from a rising sustainable designer. At 29, Sophia had developed a quiet confidence that commanded attention without demanding it. Her transformation from the heartbroken young woman abandoned at the 4 Seasons was complete in appearance, though the memory remained a private wellspring of determination. The open wound had scarred over, becoming part of her foundation rather than her definition. The conference room fell silent as Sophia entered. Around the polished table sat the leadership team she'd assembled over the past 18 months. Brilliant minds who had chosen Miltech's mission over higher salaries at established corporations. "Let's begin with international operations," Sophia said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "How are the Nairobi implementations progressing?" Catherine Williams, now officially Chief Financial Officer, brought up a presentation on the wall screen. The Kenyan government has requested an expansion to 3 additional communities after the success in Kibera. Waterborne illness rates have dropped 68% in the pilot area. Sophia nodded, a sense of profound satisfaction warming her chest. This was why she had created Miltech, not for profit or recognition, but for tangible impact on human lives. Production capacity? She inquired, turning to Zoe, now head of engineering. The new manufacturing facility will be operational next month, Zoe replied. We'll be able to produce 500 units monthly, doubling our current output. The meeting continued with updates on research and development, marketing initiatives, and expansion plans. As Chief Executive Officer, Sophia had mastered the art of decisive leadership while nurturing the collaborative environment that made Miltech special. One final announcement, Sophia said as the meeting concluded. We've secured the London office space. Miltech Europe will be operational by year's end. The news generated enthusiastic responses. International expansion had been their goal for the past year, and establishing a European headquarters represented a significant milestone. As the team dispersed, Marcus remained behind, his expression thoughtful. From one laboratory to offices on 2 continents in less than 3 years, he observed. You've created something extraordinary, Sophia. She smiled, gathering her materials. We've created something extraordinary, and we're just getting started. That evening, as Sophia's town car navigated Chicago traffic toward home, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Hayes Enterprises under investigation for environmental violations at Michigan factory. The accompanying image showed Jackson Hayes at a press conference, his expression tense as he defended his company against allegations of toxic waste dumping in a tributary of the Great Lakes. Sophia studied his face, still handsome at 36, but showing signs of strain around the eyes. The familiar twist of emotion was less painful now, more like acknowledgement of a long-ago injury that occasionally ached in cold weather. The car pulled up to her brownstone in Lincoln Park, purchased 6 months earlier when Miltech's success had finally allowed her to provide the stability she'd always wanted for the twins. As she stepped into the entryway, sounds of piano music floated down the stairs. "We're in the music room," called Diana Chen's voice. After the UN conference, Diana had become more than the twins' former pediatrician. She was family, the closest thing to a grandmother Oliver and Emma knew. Now head of pediatrics at Northwestern, she still made time each week to spend with the children she'd helped save in the NICU. Sophia followed the music upstairs to find Oliver at the piano, his small fingers moving with surprising dexterity across the keys while Emma and Diana sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by building blocks and scientific diagrams. "Mommy!" Emma exclaimed, jumping up to embrace Sophia. At 4 years old, she was already showing remarkable aptitude for engineering, her block structures increasingly complex and purposeful. Oliver paused his playing, turning on the bench with a serious expression. "I composed something new today. Would you like to hear it?" "I would love that," Sophia replied, settling beside Diana as Oliver returned to the keys. The melody that emerged was astonishingly sophisticated for a 4-year-old, mathematical in its precision, yet genuinely emotional in its expression. Sophia exchanged glances with Diana, who nodded in silent confirmation of what they both recognized: Oliver's extraordinary gift. "That was beautiful," Sophia said when he finished, gathering him into a hug. "You're creating something very special." "Look what I made," Emma interjected, unwilling to be outdone by her brother. She pointed to a structure of blocks and pipe cleaners. "It's a water filter, like yours, but for space stations." Sophia examined the creation, noting with amazement that Emma had intuitively grasped basic filtration principles. "This is incredibly clever, sweetheart. Tell me how it works." As Emma launched into a detailed explanation, using vocabulary remarkable for her age, Sophia caught Diana's meaningful look. Later, after the twins were asleep, Sophia and Diana sat in the kitchen over cups of tea. "They need specialized education," Diana said gently. "Their cognitive development is exceptionally advanced." Sophia nodded, having already researched options. "I've arranged interviews at Westfield Academy next week. Their program for gifted children is supposed to be the best in Chicago." "And how are you balancing everything?" Diana asked, her tone shifting to concern. "Miltech is expanding rapidly, and now with the twins' needs—" "I'm managing," Sophia replied with a small smile. "The company needs me, but the twins will always come first." The following week brought confirmation of Miltech's ascendancy. CNN International featured the company's emergency response in Indonesia, where Aquagen units provided clean water to earthquake survivors within hours of deployment. The footage, showing grateful families receiving safe drinking water amid devastation, captured the world's attention and underscored Miltech's growing influence. "We've received inquiries from 17 additional countries since the CNN coverage," Catherine reported during their morning briefing, "and 3 major investment funds have expressed interest in our next funding round." Sophia nodded, reviewing the reports. "Prioritize the humanitarian implementations. I want the Indonesia model replicated for all disaster response scenarios." Later that day, Sophia stood on the stage of the Global Technology Conference, addressing an audience of industry leaders and environmental advocates. "Miltech was founded on a simple premise," she explained, her voice carrying confidently through the packed auditorium, "that clean water isn't a luxury item to be commodified but a basic human right to be democratized. Our mission isn't just to purify water, it's to democratize access to it." The applause that followed confirmed what industry observers had begun noting. Sophia Miller had emerged as a visionary leader in sustainable technology, her company reshaping expectations about corporate responsibility and humanitarian innovation. After the conference, Sophia returned home to find Oliver and Emma in the study, wearing child-sized white lab coats emblazoned with the Miltech logo, gifts from the research team on their 4th birthday. "We're helping scientists," Emma announced proudly, showing Sophia a notebook filled with surprisingly accurate drawings of filtration components. "Dr. Patel said my calculations helped fix the pressure problem," Oliver added, referring to Miltech's head researcher with the casual confidence of someone unaware that most 4-year-olds didn't discuss fluid dynamics with PhDs. Sophia felt a surge of pride mixed with wonder at these extraordinary children she was raising. Their intelligence was remarkable, but more important was their developing compassion and sense of purpose. 2 months later, Miltech hosted a benefit concert supporting clean water initiatives in drought-affected regions. Oliver, now 5, performed a short piano piece he had composed, while Emma confidently explained the Aquagen technology to impressed donors. In his downtown penthouse, Jackson Hayes watched the local news coverage of the event, his expression hardening as the camera focused on Sophia being introduced as a visionary entrepreneur transforming global water access. He switched off the television with a sharp press of the remote when the twins appeared on screen, uncomfortable with emotions he refused to examine. The following morning, headlines across financial news outlets announced, "Hayes Enterprises accused of toxic dumping in Michigan River." The scandal marked the beginning of Jackson's corporate troubles, as environmental agencies launched investigations and shareholders demanded answers. For Sophia, the news brought complex emotions. She took no pleasure in Hayes Enterprises' troubles, but the contrast between their companies' trajectories felt like cosmic balance being restored. That weekend, Sophia brought the twins to Cicero, the working-class neighborhood where she had lived during her pregnancy. Miltech's foundation was installing Aquagen systems in every public school in the area, ensuring children had access to clean water regardless of the aging infrastructure. "Did you live here, Mommy?" Emma asked, watching installation teams working at her old elementary school. "I did," Sophia replied, gazing at the familiar streets. "This is where I grew up, and where I lived when I was pregnant with you both." "Where was our father?" Emma asked suddenly, her directness catching Sophia off guard. Sophia knelt to eye level with her daughter, aware that Oliver had moved closer to listen. "Your father wasn't ready to be part of our family. He made a choice not to be in our lives." "Didn't he want us?" Oliver asked quietly. "His choice wasn't about you," Sophia answered carefully. "It was about his own limitations as a person. But we've built something beautiful together, haven't we? Just the three of us." As Miltech crossed the $100 million annual revenue threshold, Sophia instituted a hiring initiative specifically targeting single parents and individuals from underserved communities. "I know what it means to need a chance," she explained to the board when presenting the program. "Talent exists everywhere. Opportunity doesn't." The announcement of the Miller Foundation followed shortly thereafter, a non-profit organization dedicated to implementing clean water solutions in communities without resources to purchase them. "We're going to give back to the community that shaped me," Sophia declared at the foundation's launch, beginning with universal access to clean water in Chicago's underserved neighborhoods. When the twins won the National Junior Science Competition with a project inspired by Aquagen technology, Sophia sat in the audience, discreetly wiping tears as they accepted their award with poise remarkable for 7-year-olds. That evening, Sophia stood on the balcony of her newly purchased downtown penthouse, gazing at Lake Michigan, the same lake she had viewed through tear-filled eyes on the night Jackson abandoned her. The water sparkled under moonlight, beautiful and serene, giving no indication of the journey that had unfolded along its shores. As she signed the contract that would make Miltech the official purification system provider for the United Nations, Sophia had no idea that her assistant would soon place an unexpected envelope on her desk, an acquisition offer from Hayes Enterprises, signed by the man who had abandoned her pregnant and alone. Sophia's assistant placed the envelope on her desk with a curious expression. "This just arrived by courier, marked confidential and urgent." The UN contract, now signed and processed, sat in Sophia's outbox as she reached for the unexpected delivery. The heavy cream envelope bore no return address, only her name elegantly embossed on the front. Breaking the seal, she slid out a stack of documents bound with a gold clip. Her blood turned to ice as she recognized the logo at the top, Hayes Enterprises. Sophia's office on the 42nd floor of Miltech's headquarters offered sweeping views of Chicago, the city that had witnessed both her greatest humiliation and her phoenix-like rise. Now, at 32, she commanded a company valued at over $1 billion, with operations on 3 continents and a reputation for revolutionary water purification technology. The document in her hands represented something she never anticipated. Jackson Hayes wanted to buy Miltech. $2.1 billion, she whispered, the figure swimming before her eyes as she scanned the offer letter. Her intercom buzzed. "Ms. Miller, Marcus Chen is here for your 10 o'clock. "Send him in," Sophia replied, her voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake rumbling through her personal landscape. Marcus entered with his usual efficient energy, pausing when he registered her expression. "What happened?" Wordlessly, Sophia handed him the acquisition offer. As he read, his eyebrows climbed steadily higher. "Hayes Enterprises," Marcus finally said, setting the document down carefully as though it might bite. "Of all the potential buyers—" "It's not a coincidence," Sophia replied, standing to gaze out at the skyline. "Hayes is hemorrhaging value after those environmental violations. Their stock has dropped 23% this quarter alone. They need to greenwash their image, and acquiring the leading sustainable water technology company would accomplish that nicely." Marcus studied her profile. "This offer is extraordinary, Sophia, nearly double our current valuation. I'm aware. The board will want to consider it seriously." Sophia turned from the window, her expression unreadable. "And what do you think, Marcus? You've been with me since I was drawing filtration systems on napkins in a hospital cafeteria." Marcus sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Financially speaking, it's exceptional. Personally speaking—" He paused. I know enough about your history with Hayes to understand this isn't just business. Memories cascaded through Sophia's mind. The restaurant, the check thrown across the table, the cruel dismissal of her intelligence and worth. The lonely hospital room where she'd held her premature twins, making promises about their future. I need to research their current situation more thoroughly, she said finally. Prepare a complete analysis for the board meeting next week. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Sophia sat in her home office researching Hayes Enterprises. Recent headlines painted a troubling picture. Hayes Enterprises faces record fines for Michigan River contamination. Shareholders question leadership as Hayes stock plummets. Environmental groups call for boycott of Hayes products. A photo accompanying a Wall Street Journal article showed Jackson at a press conference, his face noticeably aged from the man she'd known. Lines of stress bracketed his mouth and his once confident posture seemed brittle, defensive. Beside him stood a polished blonde woman identified as his second wife, Vanessa Huntington Hayes, daughter of a Massachusetts banking family. Sophia opened another browser tab and typed Jackson Hayes wife history. The search revealed that his marriage to Victoria Montgomery had ended in divorce after just 3 years. The gossip columns hinted at infidelity, though it wasn't clear on whose part. 2 marriages in 6 years, Sophia murmured, neither lasting. She closed her laptop, moving to check on the twins. Oliver and Emma, now 8 years old, shared a room by choice despite having separate bedrooms available in the spacious penthouse. Oliver's side was meticulously organized, books arranged by subject, model solar systems suspended from the ceiling, piano sheet music neatly stacked on his desk. Emma's space reflected her more experimental nature, half-completed inventions, sketchbooks filled with engineering designs, and a terrarium housing her latest biological study. Watching their peaceful sleep, Sophia felt a renewed surge of gratitude for these extraordinary children. Despite their beginning, or perhaps because of it, they had flourished beyond any parent's wildest dreams. "You did that," whispered a voice behind her. Diana Chen stood in the hallway, having arrived to stay with the twins while Sophia attended an early strategy meeting tomorrow. "Not him. You." "I know," Sophia replied, gently closing the bedroom door. "And that's exactly why I can't sell them his name now." Over the next days, Sophia drafted and redrafted her response to the acquisition offer. Each version seemed either too emotional or too clinical. Finally, on Sunday evening, she settled on simplicity. "Ms. Richardson," she wrote to Hayes's chief strategy officer, "thank you for Hayes Enterprises' interest in Miltech Solutions. After careful consideration, I must inform you that Miltech is not for sale. Not now, not in the future. Regards, Sophia Miller, CEO." Her finger hovered over the send button, heart pounding as though she were facing Jackson himself across a boardroom table. With a decisive click, the email disappeared into the digital ether, its 9 words representing years of pain transformed into power. The board meeting the following day was predictably tense. Several members expressed disappointment at not being consulted before the offer was rejected. $2.1 billion is not a figure to dismiss unilaterally, argued Richard Harmon, their newest board member. Sophia remained composed. Miltech's mission is to democratize access to clean water. Hayes Enterprises has demonstrated through their environmental violations that our fundamental values are incompatible. "Values don't pay dividends," Harmon countered. "Actually, in our case, they do," Catherine interjected, displaying a chart showing Miltech's growth trajectory. "Our ethical commitment has attracted both premium clients and top talent. Aligning with Hayes would compromise the very essence of what makes Miltech valuable." By meeting's end, the board reluctantly accepted Sophia's decision, though tension lingered in the air. As the members filed out, Marcus remained behind. "You okay?" he asked simply. Sophia nodded. "It feels like closing a chapter that should have ended years ago." That evening, As Sophia helped the twins with their advanced science projects, Emma looked up suddenly. "Mom, can I ask you something important?" "Of course, sweetheart. Is our father still alive?" The question, delivered with Emma's characteristic directness, froze Sophia mid-motion. Oliver had stopped working on his mathematics proof, watching intently. "Yes," Sophia answered carefully. "He is." "Does he know about us?" Oliver asked, his analytical mind always seeking complete information. Sophia set down the circuit board she'd been helping Emma with, giving the conversation her full attention. "He knew I was pregnant before you were born, but he chose not to be involved." "Why?" Emma persisted. Sophia considered her words carefully. "He wasn't ready for the family we would become. He made a choice based on what he valued at that time, and it wasn't us." "Does he regret it?" Oliver's question cut straight to the heart of what Sophia sometimes wondered herself. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I haven't spoken to him since before you were born." "What's his name?" Emma asked. Sophia hesitated. "I think that's enough for tonight. When you're older, I'll tell you everything. I promise I'll answer all your questions when the time is right." Later that night, after checking that the twins were asleep, Sophia pulled a leather box from her closet. Inside were items she had preserved from that period: the torn pieces of Jackson's check taped back together, the paternity denial papers his lawyers had sent, newspaper clippings about their relationship. She added a printout of the Hayes acquisition offer to the collection, then closed the box and returned it to its hiding place. Someday, when the twins were adults, they would have the full story. But not yet, not while their identities were still forming. The following morning, Rachel, her executive assistant, appeared in Sophia's office doorway with an unsettled expression. "Ms. Miller, Jackson Hayes is on line 1. He's insistent about speaking with you personally." Sophia's hand froze over the document she'd been signing. A decade of emotions compressed into a single, suspended moment. "Tell him I'm in meetings all day," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. "He can email any business proposals to our corporate development team." Rachel nodded, relieved to be spared handling the awkward call herself. Throughout the day, Sophia found her thoughts repeatedly drifting to that rejected call. What would Jackson have said? What did he want after all this time? The questions nagged at her despite her determination to focus on Miltech's upcoming expansion plans. That evening, an alert on her phone caught her attention. A breaking news story about Hayes Enterprises facing new allegations of tax fraud related to their international operations. The accompanying photo showed Jackson leaving a federal building, his face haggard, Vanessa noticeably absent. A week later, an unmarked car delivered another envelope to Miltech headquarters. Unlike the formal acquisition offer, this envelope contained a handwritten letter on Hayes' personal stationery. "Sophia," it began, "business channels seem inadequate for what needs to be said. I request a private meeting at your convenience. There are matters we should discuss after all this time. Regards, Jackson." Sophia read the note twice, then deliberately fed it through her office shredder, watching as Jackson's elegant handwriting was reduced to confetti. That night, she created a new file on her computer labeled Truth Document, beginning the process of recording every detail of her history with Jackson: the romance, the abandonment, the struggle, and her subsequent rise. This wasn't for him or even for herself, but for Oliver and Emma, who deserved to know their full story when they were ready to hear it. As she typed the final lines well past midnight, Sophia felt an unexpected lightness. By refusing the $2.1 billion acquisition offer from Hayes Enterprises, she hadn't just rejected a business proposition, she had declared once and for all that neither she nor her children were for sale at any price. The shredded remnants of Jackson's letter scattered in the wastebasket like confetti from a celebration Sophia had no interest in attending. As she closed her laptop on the newly created Truth Document, a notification chimed on her phone, a calendar reminder for tomorrow's Forbes photo shoot. 3 years had passed since Sophia had rejected Hayes Enterprises' acquisition offer. In that time, Miltech had transcended all expectations, reaching a market valuation of $4.7 billion. What had begun as sketches on hospital cafeteria napkins was now a global enterprise with offices in Chicago, New York, London, Nairobi, and Singapore. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sophia's Manhattan penthouse as she selected her wardrobe for the photo shoot. At 32, she had developed a signature style, understated elegance that communicated authority without ostentation. She chose a tailored midnight blue suit from a sustainable fashion designer, paired with a single piece of jewelry, a delicate silver pendant containing tiny samples of purified water from Miltech's first 5 international projects. "Mom, can I come to the photo shoot?" Emma called from the doorway, already dressed in her school uniform. At 10, she retained her direct manner but had developed a keen interest in public relations and media. "Not today, sweetheart. But you and Oliver will be in the family photos next week," Sophia replied, checking her appearance one final time before gathering her portfolio. The sleek Miltech car waited outside, its electric motor silent as Sophia settled into the back seat. The driver navigated through Manhattan traffic toward the financial district, where the Forbes team had arranged to photograph Sophia against the backdrop of New York Harbor, a symbolic choice for the Water Queen. "Ms. Miller, welcome," the Forbes photography director greeted her at the location. "We're thinking of positioning you here, with the harbor and Statue of Liberty behind you. The symbolism of liberty and water together seems appropriate for your story." Sophia nodded, slipping comfortably into the professional persona she had cultivated over years of media appearances. As the photographer worked, an assistant held up conversation to elicit natural expressions. "The magazine is calling this The Queen of Water, how Sophia Miller built a billion-dollar empire that's saving lives," the assistant mentioned. "Does that title resonate with you?" Sophia considered the question as the camera clicked. "The saving lives part does. The empire is secondary to that mission." 3 hours later, the interview portion began in a private room overlooking the harbor. The veteran journalist approached the conversation with respectful directness. "You've accomplished in 10 years what most entrepreneurs couldn't achieve in a lifetime," she observed. "What drives you?" "Necessity was my first motivator," Sophia answered carefully. "As a single mother with premature twins, I quickly learned that determination outweighs privilege. That lesson became Miltech's foundation." The journalist nodded, making notes. "And yet you've declined multiple acquisition offers, including a notably generous one from Hayes Enterprises 3 years ago. Many entrepreneurs would have taken the payday." Sophia maintained her composed expression, though her heart rate accelerated slightly. Miltech wasn't built to be sold. It was built to solve a fundamental human problem: access to clean water. Some missions transcend financial considerations. Back at her office in the Miltech Tower on Park Avenue, Sophia reviewed quarterly reports while a financial news channel played silently on the wall screen. Movement caught her eye. Jackson Hayes appearing at a press conference looking noticeably aged. The caption below read, "Hayes Enterprises stock plummets 58% amid tax fraud allegations." Catherine entered with additional reports, noticing Sophia's attention on the screen. "Quite the fall from grace," she commented. "The IRS investigation is apparently expanding to include offshore accounts." "What's happening with their Michigan plant?" Sophia asked, referring to the facility where environmental violations had first been discovered. "Shut down by court order last month," Catherine replied. "The remediation costs alone could run into hundreds of millions." Sophia nodded, turning her attention back to Miltech's financials. The contrast between the companies couldn't be starker. Hayes Enterprises imploding under ethical failures while Miltech expanded its humanitarian impact alongside its profit margins. That evening, Sophia attended Oliver's performance at Juilliard's program for mathematical musical composition. At 10, her son had developed his extraordinary talent into something that left audiences breathless: His fingers moved across the piano keys with mathematical precision while creating emotional resonance that belied his age. As applause erupted following his original composition, Sophia noticed several professors exchanging impressed glances. Oliver's blue-gray eyes, so reminiscent of his father's, scanned the audience until he found his mother, his serious expression softening into a rare smile. The following week brought a milestone Sophia had long anticipated: Emma's presentation at the Young Innovators exhibition hosted by MIT. Her daughter had developed a portable water purification device based on Miltech's technology, but miniaturized for individual use in emergency situations. The Pure Pouch weighs less than 8 ounces but can filter up to 1,000 liters before requiring component replacement, Emma explained to the judges with remarkable composure for a 10-year-old. I designed it specifically for disaster response scenarios where infrastructure has been compromised. When Emma was awarded first place, she accepted with a confidence that made Sophia's heart swell. My mother taught me that innovation should be accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford it, Emma told the audience. This device will be produced at cost for humanitarian organizations. The photograph of Emma accepting her award made national news, with several MIT professors already expressing interest in mentoring her future work. In the image, the resemblance to Jackson was unmistakable, something social media commenters noted with ignorant innocence, unaware of the connection. "Who does that brilliant little girl remind me of?" one commenter wrote. "Those eyes look so familiar." Sophia closed the browser window, pushing away the unwelcome reminder. Spring brought the inauguration of Miltech's new headquarters in New York, a 48-story tower on Park Avenue incorporating cutting-edge sustainable technology. From water recycling systems to solar-integrated facades, the building embodied the company's values while establishing its presence among Manhattan's corporate landmarks. "This building does more than house our operations," Sophia declared at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "It demonstrates that sustainability and profitability are complementary, not contradictory." The move to Manhattan coincided with Sophia purchasing a spacious penthouse overlooking Central Park, a home that reflected both her success and her priorities. The twins' wing included a music studio for Oliver and an engineering workshop for Emma, along with communal spaces designed for collaboration and family time. As Sophia unpacked books in the library one evening, a news alert appeared on her phone. Hayes Enterprises CEO Jackson Hayes faces criminal charges in tax evasion case. The accompanying article detailed the unraveling of financial improprieties spanning years, with prosecutors alleging deliberate fraud. A photograph showed Jackson leaving court, his designer suit hanging slightly loose on his frame, suggesting recent weight loss. The man who had once dismissed Sophia as lacking the sophistication, the lineage, or the intelligence for his world now faced potential imprisonment for crimes committed in that very world. Sophia felt no satisfaction at his downfall, only a curious emptiness where resentment had once lived. The wound that had driven her for years had gradually healed, leaving only occasional phantom pain. 2 days later, an embossed envelope arrived containing an invitation to be the keynote speaker at Tech Summit 2023, the industry's most prestigious annual gathering of technology leaders and innovators. "We would be honored to have you present Miltech's revolutionary desalination technology," the invitation read. "As our keynote speaker, you would open the conference and set the tone for this year's theme, Technology for Humanity." Rachel appeared in Sophia's doorway with the confirmed speaker list. "The panel discussions are finalized. All major green tech CEOs have confirmed, including—" She hesitated, her expression careful. "Jackson Hayes confirmed yesterday. Hayes Enterprises is apparently trying to rehabilitate their image after the tax scandals." Sophia's fingers stilled on her keyboard. In 10 years, she had meticulously avoided any event where Jackson might be present, declining invitations or sending representatives when necessary. "Interesting," she replied, her voice betraying nothing of her internal turmoil. "I heard their stock dropped 58% last quarter. Something about tax evasion and environmental violations at their Detroit factory. Rachel nodded, clearly relieved that Sophia wasn't visibly upset. Would you like me to prepare a briefing on Hayes Enterprises' current situation, in case it comes up during the summit? That won't be necessary, Sophia answered, returning to her computer screen. Their situation speaks for itself. That evening, as Sophia prepared for bed, she found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman who looked back bore little resemblance to the devastated 25-year-old who had once sobbed on a bathroom floor after being discarded like something worthless. Her phone chimed with a message from Catherine. Final preparations underway for desalination announcement at Tech Summit. R&D confirms all benchmarks exceeded expectations. The desalination technology represented Miltech's most revolutionary innovation yet, a system that could transform the global water crisis by making ocean water potable at a fraction of current costs. The announcement at Tech Summit would position Miltech to expand its impact exponentially. As Sophia reviewed the presentation materials one last time before sleep, she realized that the Tech Summit would be the first time Jackson would see her, not as the desperate young woman he had abandoned, but as the visionary CEO who had built an empire that his could never match. More significantly, it would be the first time he might see the children he had rejected before their birth. The symmetry felt almost poetic, a decade of work culminating in this moment of reckoning. Not planned, not orchestrated, but perhaps inevitable. As Sophia selected her wardrobe for the upcoming Tech Summit, her stylist team preparing a custom Alexander McQueen dress for the keynote, she had no idea that in just 1 week, she would be standing center stage, no longer as the young, desperate woman he had discarded, but as the woman who had built an empire that his never could equal. As she selected her wardrobe for the upcoming Tech Summit, the custom Alexander McQueen dress hanging in anticipation, Sophia Miller's mind flickered between professional preparation and personal trepidation. In precisely 7 days, she would stand before the technology world's elite, with Jackson Hayes somewhere in the audience. The thought sent a peculiar sensation through her chest, not quite anxiety, not quite anticipation, but something between the two. Sophia studied the dress, a masterpiece in deep sapphire with architectural elements that echoed water's fluid movement. Her stylist had called it commanding yet feminine, perfect for the woman who had revolutionized global water access. 10 years ago, she had worn department store clearance to meet Jackson at the Four Seasons. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. "Ms. Miller?" Rachel appeared in the doorway of Sophia's office, tablet in hand. "I've compiled the complete list of confirmed attendees for Tech Summit. Would you like to review it?" Sophia nodded, accepting the tablet. She scrolled methodically, recognizing names of allies, competitors, and potential partners until her finger froze over one particular entry. Jackson Hayes, CEO, Hayes Enterprises. "His confirmation came through this morning," Rachel said carefully, watching Sophia's expression. "According to my sources, they're desperately trying to rehabilitate their corporate image after the tax fraud allegations." Sophia handed the tablet back, her face a careful mask of professional neutrality. Hayes Enterprises stock has dropped nearly 60% since the investigation began. Interesting that he'd show his face at a sustainability conference given their environmental record. "Should I arrange for you to be seated away from him at all functions?" Rachel asked. "That won't be necessary," Sophia replied. "I won't alter my schedule to accommodate Jackson Hayes. Those days are long past." After Rachel departed, Sophia swiveled her chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The city sprawled before her, a testament to human ambition and engineering, much like Miltech itself. She had built something remarkable from nothing but determination and intellect, precisely the qualities Jackson had claimed she lacked. That evening, Sophia met with Dr. Meredith Chambers, the therapist she had been seeing discreetly for the past 3 years. Initially resistant to therapy, Sophia had finally acknowledged that her success hadn't completely healed the wounds of Jackson's rejection. "So he'll be at the conference," Dr. Chambers noted, watching Sophia pace the comfortable office. "How does that make you feel? Professionally? Indifferent? His company is imploding while mine thrives. Personally?" Sophia paused, searching for honesty. "I thought I'd processed everything, but the idea of being in the same room with him after all this time, it's unsettling." "Have you considered what you'll say if you encounter him directly?" Sophia sat, crossing her legs with deliberate calm. "I've rehearsed dozens of scenarios in my mind for years. Cutting remarks, dignified dismissals, even simple silence. But now that it might actually happen, none of those scripts feel authentic. Perhaps because the Sophia who would deliver those lines isn't who you are anymore," Dr. Chambers suggested. "The woman seeking revenge has evolved into someone focused on greater purposes." Later that night, as Sophia reviewed her keynote presentation on her tablet, an incoming video call from Marcus interrupted her concentration. "I just heard Hayes will be at Tech Summit," he said without preamble, his concern evident even through the screen. "News travels fast," Sophia remarked dryly. "Are you prepared for this? 10 years is a long time, but considering your history—" "I'm fine, Marcus," Sophia interrupted gently. "This confrontation was inevitable eventually. Better on my terms, at the height of my success, than on his." The following morning brought a strategic meeting with Miltech's public relations team. The conference room on the 47th floor hummed with energy as they discussed the Tech Summit presentation. "We've prepared detailed briefings on all attendees' current positions on water sustainability," explained Aisha, the PR director. "Hayes Enterprises has recently been making noise about commitment to environmental rehabilitation, likely in response to their legal troubles. Should we directly address any potential connection between you and Hayes during the conference?" asked James, head of corporate communications. "The industry has speculative rumors, but nothing concrete has ever been confirmed." Sophia considered the question carefully. For years, she had maintained strict separation between her personal history and professional identity. The twins' paternity remained private, known only to a handful of trusted confidants. "Let's neither confirm nor deny," she decided. "My focus will be solely on Miltech's innovations and mission." As the meeting concluded, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Diana Chen. Emma's school called. She corrected her chemistry teacher about molecular filtration principles again. Sophia smiled despite herself. Emma's brilliance sometimes manifested as impatience with educational authorities who couldn't match her understanding. Oliver channeled his intensity more internally, his mathematical compositions growing increasingly sophisticated. That afternoon, Sophia sat with the twins in their home study, reviewing their advanced coursework while simultaneously preparing them for their role in the Tech Summit demonstration. "Will we really be on stage with you?" Emma asked, excitement bubbling through her typically focused demeanor. "Yes, for the demonstration portion," Sophia confirmed. "You'll help showcase how the desalination prototype functions." "I've been practicing the technical specifications," Oliver noted seriously, his fingers absently tapping out a mathematical sequence on his thigh. "I can explain the osmotic pressure mechanics if needed." Sophia studied her children, marveling at their extraordinary development. At 10, they operated intellectually at levels that astounded even their specialized teachers. More importantly, they had developed compassion and purpose alongside their intelligence. "There will be many important people at this conference," Sophia said carefully. "CEOs of major companies, government officials, scientists." "Will we meet them?" Emma asked. Sophia hesitated, knowing one particular introduction might occur but uncertain how to prepare them. "You might meet some of them, yes." That night, Sophia bolted upright in bed, heart racing from a nightmare in which Jackson attempted to claim the twins, pulling them away as she fought to hold on to their small hands. Glancing at the clock, 3:17 in the morning, she rose and walked quietly to the twins' rooms, reassuring herself with the sight of their peaceful sleep. Back in her bedroom, Sophia opened her laptop and reviewed her Tech Summit presentation again, focusing on the section where she would introduce the desalination technology. The words blurred as exhaustion competed with anxiety. Would Jackson recognize his own features in Oliver's serious expression, or Emma's determined chin? Would he feel anything at all? The following morning, Marcus arrived for breakfast, having flown in from Chicago specifically to discuss the Tech Summit strategy. "You have two choices," he said as they sat in Sophia's kitchen overlooking Central Park. "Avoid him completely, which would require careful choreography, or use this opportunity to definitively close that chapter." "And which would you recommend?" Sophia asked, stirring her coffee. Marcus studied her thoughtfully. 10 years ago, I would have said avoid him. 5 years ago, confront him. Now?" He shrugged. "You're not defined by Jackson Hayes anymore. Either choice comes from your strength, not his influence." 2 days before the conference, Sophia visited the Javits Center where Tech Summit would be held. Standing in the empty main hall where thousands would soon gather, she visualized her presentation, mentally rehearsing each step. The vast space would soon showcase Miltech's vision for transforming global water scarcity, a far cry from the napkin sketches in a hospital cafeteria. As she walked across the stage, testing sightlines and transitions, Sophia imagined Jackson in the audience watching as she commanded the attention of the industry he'd once claimed she could never understand. The thought no longer triggered pain, just a quiet certainty that justice sometimes arrived in unexpected forms. Back at her office that afternoon, Rachel entered with an unsettling update. Hayes gave an interview to Bloomberg today mentioning his interest in partnerships with innovative sustainability leaders like Miltech. He specifically named your company. Sophia's fingers stilled over her keyboard. "Send me the full transcript." Reading Jackson's words, carefully crafted to suggest admiration without acknowledging their past, Sophia felt a cold clarity settle over her. This wasn't coincidence, it was calculation. Hayes Enterprises needed Miltech's reputation to rehabilitate their own, and Jackson was publicly positioning himself for some kind of alliance. That evening, as the twins practiced their demonstration roles in the penthouse's spacious living room, Sophia's mind drifted to the last image she had of Jackson, walking away from her table at the Four Seasons, adjusting his expensive suit without looking back. For years, that memory had fueled her determination. Now it seemed like a scene from someone else's life, important but distant. "Mom, is this configuration correct?" Emma's question pulled Sophia back to the present. Her daughter stood beside a miniature version of the desalination prototype, her intelligent eyes seeking approval. "Perfect," Sophia confirmed, focusing on what truly mattered. Not the past she couldn't change, but the future she was building. The night before Tech Summit, Sophia stood at her bedroom window watching Manhattan sparkle below. 10 years of work had led to this moment, her company at its zenith, her children thriving, her vision transforming millions of lives. Whatever happened tomorrow with Jackson, she would face it not as the heartbroken young woman from the Four Seasons, but as Sophia Miller, CEO of Miltech, mother of Oliver and Emma, architect of her own extraordinary life. As she finally drifted to sleep, Sophia couldn't know that her encounter with Jackson would become not just a personal reckoning, but a moment that would redefine the future of both their corporate empires. Dawn broke over New York City, illuminating the Javits Center's glass facade with golden light. Inside, the cavernous main hall hummed with pre-event activity as technicians tested sound systems and arranged seating for the 3,000 industry leaders, investors, and journalists expected to attend Tech Summit. In a private preparation room, Sophia Miller stood perfectly still as a stylist made final adjustments to her Alexander McQueen dress, its sapphire hue deliberately chosen to evoke the water technology that had built her empire. "The twins are ready," Diana Chen announced, entering the room with Oliver and Emma in tow. Both children wore custom outfits that complemented their mothers. Oliver in a perfectly tailored navy suit, Emma in a structured dress with architectural elements that mirrored Miltech's aesthetic. "You both look perfect," Sophia smiled, kneeling to straighten Oliver's already impeccable tie. "Remember, you'll join me for the demonstration portion after I've explained the desalination technology." "We've practiced 17 times, Emma noted, her confident tone betraying no nervousness despite the significant audience awaiting them. Marcus entered, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "The hall is filling up. Hayes arrived 10 minutes ago. Third row, center section, surrounded by his executive team." Sophia's fingers paused almost imperceptibly before continuing to adjust Oliver's collar. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked quietly. "After presenting to the UN General Assembly?" "This is routine," Sophia replied, though her accelerated heartbeat suggested otherwise. A stage manager appeared at the doorway. "5 minutes, Ms. Miller." As the twins were escorted to their waiting area with Diana, Marcus placed a supportive hand on Sophia's shoulder. "This isn't just a presentation, Sophia. This is the culmination of everything you've built from nothing." Sophia nodded, gathering her composure. "Not nothing, Marcus. From the ashes of what he tried to destroy." When Sophia Miller stepped onto the Tech Summit stage, the audience erupted into immediate applause. The lighting, adjusted to a blue-green glow symbolizing clean water, cast her in an almost ethereal radiance. From her position at the podium, she could see the industry's most powerful figures in attendance: tech moguls, environmental leaders, government officials. In the third row, Jackson Hayes sat rigidly, his expression unreadable at this distance. "Water is life," Sophia began, her voice carrying confidently through the hall. "Yet 2 billion people worldwide still lack reliable access to clean water, a crisis that technology has the power to solve." As she moved through her presentation, incorporating both technical data and emotional narratives of communities transformed by Miltech's innovations, Sophia commanded the room with natural authority. The audience remained captivated as she outlined the evolution of water purification technology, culminating in Miltech's revolutionary approach. Jackson Hayes sat motionless in the third row, surrounded by nervous executives from his troubled company. At 42, he appeared older than his years, stress lines etched around his eyes, premature gray at his temples. Each slide detailing Miltech's global impact seemed to physically affect him, his posture becoming increasingly rigid as Sophia confidently described innovations his company had failed to develop. "Today, I'm pleased to announce Miltech's most transformative innovation yet," Sophia continued, her voice strong with conviction. "Our new desalination technology reduces energy consumption by 72% while increasing output by 40%, making large-scale ocean water purification economically viable for the first time." The audience murmured with excitement as Sophia gestured toward the side of the stage. "To demonstrate this breakthrough, I'd like to welcome 2 special collaborators who have contributed meaningful insights to our research and development process." Oliver and Emma walked onto the stage with remarkable poise for 10-year-olds, joining their mother beside a scaled demonstration model of the desalination system. The audience offered appreciative applause, unaware of the seismic moment occurring in the third row. Jackson Hayes froze as the children appeared under the stage lights. His face drained of color as he instinctively recognized what no one else in the audience could know. These were his children. Oliver's profile was unmistakably reminiscent of Jackson's own at that age, the same serious brow and analytical gaze. Emma's confident stance and characteristic tilt of her head mirrored habits Jackson saw daily in his own reflection. "Oliver will explain the mathematical model behind the pressure optimization," Sophia said, stepping aside as her son approached the microphone with remarkable confidence. "Our system utilizes a proprietary algorithm to reduce osmotic pressure requirements by creating a precisely calibrated semi-permeable membrane structure," Oliver explained, his articulation astonishing the audience. As he continued with his technical explanation, several venture capitalists in the front row exchanged impressed glances. Emma followed, demonstrating the prototype's functionality with practiced precision. When saline water enters this chamber, our nanotechnology filtration process removes salt molecules while consuming 63% less energy than conventional systems. The demonstration concluded with crystal-clear water flowing from the previously salt-laden sample, prompting enthusiastic applause. As the twins stood beside their mother for a final bow, photographers captured the moment, a triumphant family portrait that would appear in business publications worldwide. Jackson remained immobile, his breathing shallow as he stared at the three figures on stage. A journalist sitting nearby noticed his unusual reaction, making a note to investigate the tech mogul's apparent distress. During the networking reception that followed, Sophia navigated through admirers and potential partners with practiced grace. CEOs and investors competed for her attention, each eager to associate with Miltech's groundbreaking technology. The twins had been escorted to a private room for refreshments, their public role completed for the day. Sophia. The voice behind her was instantly recognizable despite the decade that had passed since she'd last heard it. It carried a raspiness that was new, perhaps from stress, perhaps from age. Sophia felt a curious calm settle over her as she turned, finally facing the man who had once shattered her world. "Mr. Hayes," she replied, her voice cool and measured, using his surname as a deliberate reminder of their professional, not personal connection. "What a surprise to see you at an event focused on sustainability, considering Hayes Enterprises' environmental record." Jackson paled at her composure, clearly unprepared for this version of Sophia, poised, powerful, untouchable. Up close, the signs of his recent troubles were evident. Fine lines around his eyes, a certain hollowness to his cheeks that his expensive suit couldn't disguise. "You look extraordinary," he managed, his eyes taking in her transformation from the young woman he'd discarded. "Your success, all of this. It's impressive." "What exactly surprises you, Mr. Hayes?" Sophia asked, her tone remaining professionally detached. "That the girl from the South Side built something larger than the empire you inherited." "Sophia, about the past," he began, desperation edging into his voice. "Mom!" Oliver approached, holding a tablet displaying complex equations. "I've optimized the filtration algorithm to reduce energy consumption by an additional 17%. Jackson froze at the word "mom," his eyes fixing on the boy whose features mirrored his own with undeniable clarity. He seemed unable to process the living evidence of what he had rejected a decade earlier. "Oliver, this is Mr. Hayes, CEO of Hayes Enterprises," Sophia introduced with practiced neutrality. "Mr. Hayes, my son Oliver, recently accepted into MIT's Young Scientists program at 10 years old." 10 years, Jackson repeated, his voice barely audible as the mathematical significance of the number struck him with physical force. Emma joined them, her analytical gaze sweeping over the stranger with casual assessment before greeting him with the articulate precision that had impressed Tech Summit attendees minutes earlier. "Mr. Hayes is interested in our technology, children," Sophia continued smoothly, though somewhat belatedly. "Hayes Enterprises tried to acquire us for $2.1 billion last year, an offer we declined, naturally." "It wasn't just business," Jackson attempted to explain, his composure cracking. "I wanted—" "CEO Miller," interrupted a Wall Street Journal journalist, approaching with recorder in hand. "Could you comment on rumors that Miltech is about to announce a partnership with the federal government to implement purification systems in all public schools nationwide?" "Gladly," Sophia responded, turning deliberately toward the reporter, but not before saying quietly to Jackson, "Some opportunities, Mr. Hayes, like time itself, don't come around again." The evening culminated in a formal gala dinner closing the first day of Tech Summit. Sophia sat at the head table with other industry leaders, while Jackson occupied a less prominent position befitting his company's diminished status. Throughout the meal, she felt his gaze repeatedly returning to the twins, who charmed distinguished guests with their intelligence and poise. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the master of ceremonies as dessert plates were cleared, To present this year's Humanitarian Innovation Award, we welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations. Applause filled the ballroom as Sophia was called to the stage, where she received not only the prestigious award, but confirmation of a $1.5 billion contract to implement Miltech systems in refugee camps worldwide. Standing before the microphone, with cameras broadcasting to more than 60 countries, Sophia made a decision that would forever change the narrative. 10 years ago, a pregnant young woman was abandoned in a restaurant by a man who told her she had no value, intelligence, or capacity to belong in his world. She began, her voice steady as shock rippled through the audience. Today, that young woman stands before you, leading a company that saves millions of lives annually. She paused, her composure unwavering while attendees' eyes widened in realization. And those children he rejected before they were even born are now revolutionizing their respective fields before their 11th birthdays. Cameras found Jackson Hayes, visibly uncomfortable at his table as whispers spread through the ballroom. I mention this not for revenge, but because I believe our stories define our values. Miltech was built on the principle that no one, regardless of their background, gender, or circumstances, should ever be considered disposable. As Sophia concluded her speech, the room erupted in thunderous applause. The next morning, Hayes Enterprises stock plummeted 23%, while Miltech shares rose 17% in the first hour of trading. The thunderous applause still echoed in Sophia's ears as she exited the Tech Summit stage. The words she had kept buried for a decade had finally been spoken aloud, not in a whisper or a private confession, but in front of the entire technology industry elite, broadcast to millions worldwide. As she returned to her table, avoiding eye contact with Jackson's section, she felt a curious lightness, as if naming her history had finally freed her from its weight. By morning, Sophia's revelation dominated every business channel and technology publication. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications as she prepared for the twins' breakfast in their Manhattan penthouse. "Mom, we're trending worldwide," Emma announced, scrolling through a tablet with typical analytical detachment. At 10, she processed information with remarkable objectivity, even when that information concerned her own origin story. Oliver looked up from his mathematical calculations, his expression more guarded. "People are saying things about our biological father. They've identified him as Jackson Hayes." Sophia set down the fruit platter she'd been arranging, moving to sit between her children at the breakfast counter. "Yes, they have. How do you feel about that?" "I'm not sure," Oliver admitted, his blue-gray eyes, so like Jackson's, clouded with confusion. "He's mathematically our father, but not functionally our father." "Exactly," Sophia confirmed, squeezing his hand gently. "Biology creates connections, but choices and actions create relationships." The Wall Street Journal published an investigative piece, Emma continued, turning her tablet to show Sophia the headline, "The Heir and the Empire Rejected: The Untold Story of Jackson Hayes and Sophia Miller." The article detailed how industry insiders had long speculated about connections between the two CEOs, citing anonymous sources who confirmed Jackson had known about Sophia's pregnancy before her termination from her teaching position. The piece carefully chronicled Miltech's rise alongside Hayes Enterprises' ethical failures, framing the companies as mirror opposites in corporate responsibility. Sophia's phone rang, Marcus calling from the lobby. "The media situation is intensifying," he reported. 17 news vans outside the building. Security has established protocols, but you might consider working remotely today. By afternoon, social media had exploded with the hashtag #CheckTeamSophia, as women shared stories of workplace discrimination and single motherhood struggles. Business commentators debated the ethical and legal implications of Jackson's abandonment, with several questioning whether shareholders should demand his resignation given the character issues the revelation exposed. In his penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue, Jackson Hayes stared numbly at the television as his personal and professional reputation unraveled in real time. CNBC displayed a graphic showing Hayes Enterprises stock in free fall, down 23% and still dropping. His phone vibrated with a text from his wife, Vanessa. "My lawyer will contact yours. Don't attempt to reach me." Their 3-year marriage had been more strategic partnership than love match, but Jackson had believed it stable. Now, watching Vanessa's carefully worded press statement, I was misled about fundamental aspects of Mr. Hayes's character and past decisions. He recognized the calculated distance she was creating before the company imploded completely. 4 days after the Tech Summit revelation, Sophia sat in her office reviewing protocols for the twins' security. The media frenzy had intensified beyond anything she'd anticipated, with reporters approaching Oliver and Emma's school and photographers attempting to access Miltech's private floors. "Ms. Miller," Rachel appeared in the doorway, her expression unusually tense. "Jackson Hayes is in the reception area, without an appointment. Security is asking for instructions." Sophia set down her pen, a curious calm settling over her. This confrontation had been inevitable from the moment she spoke her truth publicly. "Send him up." Minutes later, Jackson Hayes entered her office, the contrast between them immediately striking. Where Sophia radiated composed confidence in a tailored burgundy suit, Jackson appeared diminished in his bespoke attire, which hung slightly loose on his frame. The past week had etched new lines around his eyes, and the confident posture she remembered had given way to something more tentative. "Sophia," he began, remaining standing when she didn't offer him a seat. "I've come to offer explanations." 10 years late, she replied evenly, gesturing to a chair across from her desk, establishing the power dynamic of executive to supplicant. Jackson sank into the chair, his gaze taking in the office with its breathtaking views of Central Park, the wall of awards, the framed cover of Forbes declaring Sophia the Water Queen. Everything in the space communicated a success he could no longer claim for himself. "My father was dying when you told me about the pregnancy," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion or fatigue. "He threatened to disinherit me if I tainted the Hayes lineage with a nobody from the South Side. I was weak, cowardly, obsessed with his approval." "And now?" Sophia asked, her expression neutral. "What's changed besides your bank account and social standing?" "When I saw Oliver and Emma at the conference, when I saw what you've built," Jackson's voice faltered. "I realized the monumental mistake I made. I want to know them. I want to be part of their lives." Sophia studied him for a long moment, noting how desperation had replaced the arrogance she once knew. "Have you considered that perhaps this isn't about what you want? That perhaps your preferences are no longer relevant in this equation?" "I have legal rights," he began, "which you formally abdicated when you signed papers sent by your attorneys denying paternity and any responsibility." Sophia completed his sentence, her voice steady. "Documents I kept, along with your torn check, as a reminder of the kind of man you are." Jackson appeared physically struck by her words, color draining from his face. "What can I do to fix this?" "That's the question, isn't it, Jackson?" Sophia replied, rising from her chair to stand at the window. "Not everything can be fixed. Not everything is for sale. Some doors, once closed, remain closed." That evening, the penthouse doorman delivered an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter from Jackson and documents transferring 30% of Hayes Enterprises shares to a trust fund in the twins' names, valued at approximately $900 million. Sophia read the letter, Jackson's desperate plea for connection with the children he'd rejected, his offer to fund their education, opportunities, anything they might desire. The next morning, the package returned to Jackson's office with a simple note. "We're not interested in crumbs from your table. The twins will inherit Miltech, a company built with integrity. Your money cannot buy the time you've lost or create memories that never existed." 2 weeks later, Sophia stood in the private terminal at Teterboro Airport, reviewing final details for Miltech's humanitarian mission to Tanzania. The company jet waited on the tarmac, loaded with equipment for the 500th Aquagen system installation in a rural community. "Everything's ready, Ms. Miller," the flight attendant confirmed. "We'll depart as soon as your family boards." The twins approached from the terminal building, engaged in animated discussion about modifications they'd designed for the rural implementation. At 10, they carried themselves with the confident purpose of children who had always known their value, always been encouraged to contribute meaningfully to the world. As Sophia shepherded them toward the aircraft stairs, movement near the parking area caught her attention. Jackson Hayes stood beside his Bentley, watching them from a distance, a solitary figure against the backdrop of Manhattan's skyline. Their eyes met briefly across the tarmac, the weight of a decade passing between them in a silent exchange. "Who is that man?" Emma asked, following her mother's gaze with characteristic perceptiveness. "Someone who made different choices than we did," Sophia answered, guiding her children toward the steps. "Come on, we have a world to transform." As the Miltech jet lifted into the clear blue sky, Sophia gazed out the window at the diminishing landscape below. Her greatest victory, she reflected, wasn't her billion-dollar empire or even Jackson's public humiliation. It was the full, meaningful life she had built, a life so complete that his absence had become irrelevant. In his empty Fifth Avenue apartment, Jackson watched live coverage of the America's most inspiring family arriving in Tanzania, where local children greeted Oliver and Emma with traditional dances. The empire he had inherited from his father crumbled around him under fraud investigations, while the empire he had rejected flourished before his eyes, the cruelest form of poetic justice. As cameras captured Emma explaining the water purification system to village elders with remarkable clarity and compassion, Jackson recognized features of himself in her determined chin, in Oliver's analytical expressions. These extraordinary children, his biological legacy, would never know him as father. They would know only the man who had deemed their mother unworthy, who had tried to solve their existence with a check on a restaurant table. The television showed Sophia cutting a ribbon to inaugurate the new water system, surrounded by grateful community members. Her elegant confidence stood in stark contrast to the desperate young woman he had dismissed a decade earlier. In that moment, watching her create life-changing impact a world away, Jackson finally understood the magnitude of what he had thrown away, not just a family, but a partnership that could have defined greatness on terms more meaningful than his father had ever imagined. While the aircraft carrying the Miltech delegation took off, Sophia reflected that her greatest victory wasn't her billion-dollar empire, nor even Jackson's public humiliation. It was the full and meaningful life she had built, a life so complete that his absence had become irrelevant. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time, just click on the screen.